Welcome back, U.S. history students. Today, we talk about poor old John Adams, who did great during the Continental Congress, but had a very bad presidency. After George Washington decided not to run for a third term, Vice President John Adams ran and was elected in 1796. Adams was the first president who identified himself as part of a political party. Adams was a Federalist. John Adams had a pretty rough presidency. The rivalry between the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans was getting more heated, and there was a growing threat that we would soon be going to war against France. Adams was able to negotiate with the French to avoid war. However, this threat led Adams to sign a very controversial series of laws known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. In 1797, there was fear that the French were trying to instigate war with the United States. In an effort to avoid conflict, Adams sent a delegation to France in order to negotiate a settlement. The delegation team arrived in France and reported that they were met by 3 French agents, codenamed X, Y, and Z. The agents told the Americans that in order to begin negotiations, they would first have to pay a bribe to the French government. This led to a diplomatic crisis known as the XYZ affair, and it greatly increased the tensions between the two countries. In this atmosphere, and to deal with the threat, the Federalist-controlled Congress passed a series of 4 laws known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. These laws, the Naturalization Act, the Alien Act, and the Alien Enemies Act, lengthened the amount of time it took to become a U.S. citizen and made it easier for the president to arrest and deport immigrants who he felt posed a danger to the country. Democratic Republicans, who received a lot of support from recent immigrants, saw this as a disguised effort to prevent recent immigrants from voting for the Democratic Republican candidates. The most controversial part of the acts was the Sedition Act. Sedition means conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the government. The law prohibited any speech that criticized government officials, including the president. Several newspaper editors were arrested and imprisoned as a result of the act. Federalists argued that the law was necessary because national security was at risk. Democratic Republicans argued that the law was an unconstitutional violation of free speech. In 1799, the state legislatures of Virginia and Kentucky passed resolutions or official statements known as the Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions. These resolutions denounced the Sedition Act as a violation of the First Amendment. In doing so, they raised the issue of nullification of federal law. To nullify means to invalidate government decisions. They argued that federal law did not have to be enforced by the states if that law was unconstitutional. In the end, the Sedition Act simply expired, but the damage to the reputation of the Federalist Party was already done. By the time the next election came around in 1800, support for the Democratic Republicans had grown significantly, and we'll talk about that election in the next lecture.